We begin today by looking at JFK and his term in office after he was elected in 1960. In his inauguration address in 1961, his famous quote was, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." During his campaign, he was often encouraging the American people to serve their country through volunteerism. He would then go on to implement programs during his administration to encourage that same volunteerism through the American people. His presidency really seemed to have a special focus on American culture. He was very young, energetic, he was very attractive to the youth of America. His wife, Jackie Kennedy, the First Lady, was very uh, interested in fashion. She became a fashion icon. She was one of the First Ladies that the American people looked at to see what she was wearing and what designers she was wearing. She was particularly interested in French designers as well, and even had American designers copy those French designers so she could wear her favorite styles. Kennedy was often known for recruiting what he called the best and the brightest. These are going to be your top academics, intellectuals, and also war veterans to help serve in his administration. These were people that he felt could bring the most to the table in order to help the country move forward. He inspired many Americans with feelings of hope and prosperity, the fact that many people felt like our country was going to move forward under his administration. His domestic program, or legislative program, was known as the New Frontier. It included programs for medical care for the poor, urban renewal, which means rebuilding those inner cities, and help for education. Just like previous presidents, and Truman specifically, Congress definitely resisted many of his programs. That goes back to the fact that he did not have a voter's mandate. Because of this, he did not take very many political risks. A voter's mandate is where the president receives a big portion of the voters in the election, a large majority of the popular vote. The fact that he ran and won in a very close election, one of the closest in American history, he did not have a landslide election, meaning he couldn't go to Congress and tell Congress that it was clear the American people wanted what he wanted so that they should push through his programs. As a result of the fact that he lacked a voter's mandate, he really didn't do very much for poverty or civil rights in his first years in office. Included in his New Frontier program was going to be deficit spending. This was something also used by FDR, which means we're going to spend more than the government made. It was an attempt to boost the economy by dumping money into it to jumpstart it. He is going to also increase defense spending. This was also because we were in the Cold War and we had many different actions going on around the world that concerned the American people. He, along the lines of his volunteerism, was the Peace Corps. This was a volunteer program that sent American citizens to poverty-stricken nations to assist in social and economic development. American citizens, usually college graduates, would spend a 2-year term in a foreign country where they would live alongside the people and assist them with various jobs, teaching, assistance, some minor medical assistance. And again, this was part of the Cold War programs in an effort to help better the American um, morale around the world, to help people basically like Americans better. Another similar program was Alliance for Progress. This program was designed to give aid to poverty-stricken Latin American nations. So this one is very similar to Peace Corps, except this one targets Latin America specifically. This one's going to try to help foster our economic cooperation between the United States and Latin America. Basically, help our economies work together better. By 1963, we see that JFK is going to begin pushing for civil rights, bringing about an end to poverty, and lowering taxes. When the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957, the space race is going to begin. Again, in 1961, the Soviets are going to beat the United States again by putting the first man into space. At this point, JFK is going to challenge our leaders to get us to the moon and beat the Soviets. We had already seen Eisenhower create NASA, an attempt to catch up to Soviet space technology. We put Alan Shepard into space, the first American in space, John Glenn becoming the first man to orbit the Earth. And while the program did suffer many setbacks, by 1969, in July of that year, the United States is going to put the first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong. His famous quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Unfortunately, on November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy, along with the vice president and his wife as well, were in Dallas, Texas. He was in a parade when he was assassinated while riding in this open air car you see here on the right. The shots came from the Texas School Book Depository, also pictured on the right. You see the red arrow here marking the place where the shots were fired from. Very quickly, very soon after JFK was pronounced dead at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Lyndon B. Johnson, who you see here, alongside him, Jackie Kennedy, was being sworn in to become President of the United States. It was later that same day that they arrest Lee Harvey Oswald for this crime. They found a rifle with his fingerprints on it. He was an employee of the Texas School Book Depository, and he had a very shady past with links to communism. In fact, he had lived in the Soviet Union for a brief time and also campaigned for Cuba. Shortly after Oswald's arrest, Jack Ruby, who was a Dallas nightclub owner and totally distraught over the assassination of President Kennedy, is going to shoot and kill Oswald while he was being transferred to court. The fact that Ruby is going to shoot and kill Oswald the way that he did is going to add to many Americans' beliefs that there was a conspiracy theory involved in the assassination of our president. There were many conspiracy theories, one of them being the fact that the government claimed there was a lone assassin who was here on the left, Lee Harvey Oswald. Many Americans did not believe that a particular lone gunman could have achieved those shots in the time limit that was recorded. Others cited what became known as the magic bullet theory. People questioned whether or not a single bullet could have hit both the Governor Conley, who was sitting in the front seat of that limousine, and JFK at the same time. Was it possible? And others pointed to the grassy knoll. People who were on the scene pointed to the grassy knoll as the location of other gunmen, and possibly claimed that they heard shots from that area. There were so many questions being asked that the president, Lyndon B. Johnson, is going to appoint a whole commission that becomes known as the Warren Commission to investigate the event. After a long, lengthy investigation, they are going to announce that Lee Harvey Oswald was in fact the lone assassin in this tragedy. However, that did not put to rest all of the questions. So later, other congressional investigations announced that maybe there were involvements from other people, but that involvement was unknown. Now the United States faced a very difficult position in trying to move past the assassination of a president that they loved. And what we're going to see is how Lyndon Johnson is going to attempt to achieve that.